Okay, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get into some rational functions. All right. So what we're going to do for this is we want to determine the horizontal and vertical asymptotes. So the first thing I always like to do is always look for the horizontal asymptotes, right? So we can follow the rules for finding the horizontal asymptotes. And what I notice is I have a little x, which I don't have my x, but I could write x to the 0 here, because x to the 0 is 1, right? So I could essentially have an x to the 0 there. So if I look, remember, at my exponents, so if I was to FOIL this out, I would have x squared. Since 2 is larger than 0, using our horizontal asymptotes test, we notice that we are going to have a horizontal asymptote at 0. All right, and that's by the horizontal asymptote test that we're going to use. The next thing is we need to determine what the vertical asymptote is going to be. So our vertical asymptote, to do that, what we're going to look at is kind of look at our restrictions for our function. And since the only restrictions on this function is we cannot have remember we talked about, rational function, you cannot have a rational function on the denominator equals 0. That's the only restriction I see with this function on the bottom, is I just cannot make it 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say to find the vertical, we are going to find the values that make the bottom of our denominator 0, because once we find those values, we're going to take them out of our domain, and those are going to be your asymptotes. So what we do is we set the bottom equal to 0. So I have x minus 2 squared. Well, to undo the squaring, I square root both sides. So I have 0 equals x minus 2. Add 2 to the other side, and I have x equals 2. So therefore, when x equals 2, I have 0 on the bottom. Therefore, that does not exist on my function. So therefore, my vertical asymptote is going to be when x equals 2. Now, the last thing we just want to talk about, I'll just kind of go through it very quickly, is the domain. So remember, the domain is going to be all your x values that are part of your function. Well, if we said x equals 2 is going to be an asymptote, that's not part of your function. So I'll write the domain could be all real numbers where x cannot equal 2. And that's just one way I'll write for you to explain it that way. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's your example. I hope you enjoyed. Comment, subscribe, let me know. Thanks.